Before we go deeply in hormone world or all the course in general, it's very important to get a proper understanding of the main biochemical reactions that occur in our bodies. The question is, how can you get yourself a good and proper understanding of the nutrition science without knowing what's going on with the foods you eat and that you consider healthy? And above all, to achieve your goal whatsoever, building muscles, losing weight, or you want a healthy lifestyle. Well, let's dive in. Here is a small trick to remember all the biochemical reactions easily. Whenever there is at the end lysis, that means you have a catabolic or degradation reaction. Whenever you have Genesis at the end, that means you have an anabolic or synthetic reactions. Well, let's have an example in order to practice your understanding. In this word, we have glycolysis. Let's divide it into two parts. Glyco, that means glucose, and lysis, that means catabolism. Together, glucose catabolism. Well, let's have another example. Lipogenesis. Lipo, if we divide it into two parts, lipo we have, that means lipid. Genesis, anabolism. So, together, lipid anabolism. Another point that you have to understand, and I already explained it, when we talk about catabolism, that means our body is releasing energy. It is producing energy. When we talk about anabolism, that means, for example, here, lipogenesis. Our body is producing lipid, okay? Is producing fat. That means it needs energy. So, anabolism reaction, it consumes energy, okay? I am now expecting that you got our trick. Well, let us get into the heart of the matter. What is the glycolysis? It is the anaerobic oxidative catabolism pathway from glucose to pyruvate. I am going to explain this. It doesn't require actually oxygen, but it takes place even in the presence of oxygen. Its purpose is the production of ATP through a very amazing process, which is first, when glucose enters the cytosol of the cell, it will undergo a chain of reactions leading to the formation of the pyruvate. In total, 8 reactions in order to give at the end 2 pyruvates. Each contains 3 carbons. In human, the pyruvate thus formed can take 2 important routes. Aerobic pathway, the pyruvate enters the mitochondria to be transformed into acetyl-CoA. This one enters Krebs cycle. A reaction cascade will occur to produce at the end ATP, or actually it's GTP. This one, it is a form of energy like ATP. Just instead of A, which is adenine, it is G, which is guanine, plus not H2 and fat H2. These metabolites or coenzymes will join the mitochondrial respiratory chain to transform these coenzymes into energy in the form of ATP. Anaerobically, that means in the absence of oxygen in the muscle, the pyruvate in the cytosol can no longer continue its oxidation. It will undergo a reduction into lactic acid or lactate. Certain tissues such as brain, red blood cells, kidneys, lens, cornea of the eye, and muscle in rapid contraction need a continuous supply of glucose. Only the liver is able to perform this function by mobilizing glycogen and by neoglucogenesis. Well, what is neoglucogenesis? If we divide this word into 3 parts, neo, gluco, and genesis. Glucogenesis, that means glucose synthesis, and neo, that means from a non-carbohydrate substrate. It can be lactate or lactic acid, alanine, glycerol, and certain glucoforming amino acids. 90% of the neo-formed glucose is synthesized in the liver and the remaining 10% in the kidneys. Now let's talk about another reaction, which is glycogenesis? Well, let's devise this word again. Glyco, which means glycogen, and genesis, metabolism. So it is the glycogen synthesis. Pay attention. When we are talking about glucose synthesis, we use gluco, like here. When we are talking about glycogen, we use glyco. Well, what is glycogen? Glycogen is a long chain of linked glucose which forms when the body has extra glucose. So it stores it in the liver and the muscles through glycogenesis reaction. This pathway is stimulated by insulin. Now let's talk about glycogenolysis. Well, you have to make the difference between glycogenolysis and glycolysis. Here's the point. Gena, okay? Here we are talking about the degradation of glycogen, okay? It is the opposite of the last reaction. It is the production of glucose from the phosphorylasis of glycogen. The glucose formed either participates in glycolysis or participates in other reactions. Now let's go to lipogenesis. It is the biosynthesis of fatty acids. All our cells are able to synthesize fatty acids, especially in the liver. The starting point is acetyl-CoA. It is a 2-carbon. Acetyl-CoA is a central intermediary. As you can see on the diagram, from fatty acids we can form acetyl-CoA and vice versa, and it is the same for ketone body. From acetyl-CoA we can form cholesterol, triglycerides, phospholipids, eicosanoids, and energy via Krebs cycle. Lipogenesis provides the energy necessary for fatty acids for the synthesis of structural lipids and energy storage. This reaction is stimulated as well by insulin. Now let's go to beta oxidation of fatty acids. It is an oxidative degradation which detaches fatty acids from the list-2C in the form of acetyl-CoA. It takes place in the liver, heart, kidney, at most, and in the muscles. Its purpose is the synthesis of energy. As you can see here, it is here. Lipolysis is the degradation of lipids which leads to the release of fatty acids from triglycerides to diglycerides and from diglycerides to monoglycerides. Now let's go to hepatic ketogenesis. It takes place in the mitochondria of the liver. It is the formation of ketone bodies, which are acetoacetate, acetone, and beta-hydroxybutyrate. When it comes to ketolysis, it is the degradation of ketone bodies. Acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate are energetic compounds for skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles, which contain thiolase, okay, which transforms acetoacetate into acetyl-CoA. If there are a lot of carbohydrates, ketone will be in a short supply. During a prolonged fast and during diabetes, there is a massive breakdown of fatty acids, which leads to an increase in ketogenesis. There will be an accumulation of ketone bodies in the blood, which results in metabolic disorders. Here, I should clarify a very important point, okay? In the ketogenic diet, the state of ketosis obtained is much lower than that obtained during the ketoacidosis that occurs in a diabetes when he or she doesn't inject insulin, which in the most cases is fatal. The keto diet is very beneficial for health, but you need absolute control to not fall into its negative effects, which can condemn your life. Here you will find 2 diagrams in order to enrich more and more your understanding. In this lesson, we are going to talk about what is hormone, the common characteristics of hormone, and finally, the classification of hormone. What is hormone? It is a chemical molecule that allows the coordination of cellular activities secreted by the endocrine glands, released into the circulation. Its purpose is to reach its target cell distant from the emitting cell. The target cell has a specific receptor for this hormone. It is the hormone-receptor interaction which triggers the response of the target cell to the message brought by the hormone. When it comes to the common characteristics of hormones, they are found in a very low concentration. All hormones are released into the circulation. The secretion mode and rate differ depending on the hormones. All hormones act through a specific receptor. When it comes to loss, the hormone released into the circulation can reach the target cell and cause the cell response. It can go through the kidney, where it can be performed, or the liver, where it is metabolized, inactivated, and this because of the transformation which are function of the nature of the hormone. Certain hormones undergo after hepatic transformation a phenomenon of conjugation, which allows their renal elimination. Hormones are classified into three groups according to their structures. We have hormones derived from amino acids, steroid hormones, and protein hormones. Hormones derived from amino acids such as thyroid hormones, catecholamines, and endolamines. They come from tyrosine and tryptophan. These hormones are not very soluble in water. When it comes to steroid hormones, they have as precursor cholesterol, 27 carbons. They are classified according to their carbon number. 21 carbons, we have glucocorticoids such as cortisol, mineralocorticoids such as aldosterone and progesterone. 19 carbons, we have androgen. 18 carbons, we have estrogen. They are synthesized in the cortical part of the adrenal glands, with the exception of androgens. There are androgens, and also they are synthesized in the testicle and ovaries as well. The synthesis is always done in the order of 27 carbons, 21, 19, and 18 carbons. It is the filiation. The endocrine cells have the enzymatic equipment which makes it possible to direct the synthesis of the steroid hormones according to the number of carbons. Steroid hormone catabolism is hepatic, with urinary elimination. When it comes to protein hormones, we find in this group peptide, polypeptide hormones, and protein of different structures. They are synthesized by the process that we all studied in high school: DNA transcription, translation of RNA, and the cytoplasm. Then they will undergo a maturation. We find in this group insulin, growth hormone, and generally hypothalamic hormones. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid hormone. Its synthesis takes place in the fasciculated area of the adrenal cortex. Its precursor is cholesterol. Cortisol has circadian rhythm. That means its peak secretion at 7 a.m. and low at night. Cortisol has much more catabolic role. Cortisol increases blood sugar by stimulating glycogenolysis. It ensures fat redistribution by stimulating lipolysis. At the muscular level, cortisol slows down the penetration of glucose and promotes catabolism, which is stimulating of proteolysis and blockage of proteosynthesis, in order to release amino acids in the blood and thereby promote neoglucogenesis and thus ketogenesis. And in the liver, cortisol stimulates the enzymes of neoglucogenesis. Too frequent cortisol discharges are harmful for the body. Its catabolic effect leads to premature aging of cells. Cortisol is found to be harmful to many hormone receptors. For example, growth hormone and testosterone will find it hard to fulfill their anabolic mission, or insulin resistance can develop and cause type 2 diabetes. has also a mineralocorticoid action, which is the tendency to water sodium retention, which causes long-term weight gain and edema, as well as a diuretic action by inhibiting the action of antidiuretic hormone. At bone level, it causes growth arrest, osteoporosis, and decalcification of the bone. It has also an anti-inflammatory, antipyretic, anti-allergic, and also immunosuppressive properties. It has also a stimulating action on the central nervous system. The main factor that promotes the rise of cortisol is stress. It is the hormone that will be secreted when your body feels that it's in danger. Of course, adrenaline too is secreted in such situation. Caffeine raises cortisol level, but you don't have to worry at moderate doses. In order to avoid an exaggerated elevation of cortisol, healthy food, resting with good and healthy sleeping, and exercises would do the job. I have to clarify one more thing before the end of this lesson. A low cortisol level is also a problem. Insufficient cortisol can give you a feeling of tiredness, emotion, anxiety, and also diseases. Testosterone is synthesized in the adrenal gland and also in the testicle. I will open small brackets to talk about the testicle. Testicle has two functions: endocrine, which is the secretion of testosterone at the level of Leydig cells, which is regulated by the LH hormone, and exocrine, which is spermatogenesis, at the level of Sertoli cells and regulated by the FSH hormone. Testosterone is a steroid hormone of desire that develops muscle strength, 40% muscle in men compared to 23% in women. Testosterone naturally facilitates the gain of muscle mass and strengthens the muscles by strengthening the bone and skeleton, reaction speed, and even impatience. 92% of drivers who honk at red lights are men. Aggression, competition, and the instinct of domination. Far vision, hunting, orientation in space, and a taste for adventure, new experiences, and protectionist risk, which is the attraction for a young female to be protected. As you know, the testosterone precursor is cholesterol. So a high fat intake raises your testosterone level. So eating healthy fat like what's found in egg yolk, avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, sunflower, almonds, walnut, hazelnut, oily fish like tuna, salmon, sardines are good. Studies have shown the benefits of vitamin D, vitamin B6, and zinc in increasing testosterone level. Sleep is very important for testosterone production. A lack of sleep or poor quality sleep will result in a drop in testosterone levels. So make sure you have enough hours of sleep to suit your needs and maintain quality, restful sleep. Intense and short exercises are very beneficial for raising your testosterone level. When it comes to stress, well, we know that stress raises your cortisol level. That will interfere negatively with your testosterone production. So you have to try and build strategies to avoid stress at any price, like practicing yoga, meditation, doing healthy habits, and avoiding toxic people. Finally, when it comes to protein and carbs, both are important for testosterone production at the good ratio that we will undertake later in this course. Insulin is a protein hormone secreted by the beta cells from islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. Insulin is a hypoglycemic hormone. When you eat carbohydrates, they are broken down or digested to simple sugars or glucose in the intestine. The pancreas senses this sugar in the gut and releases insulin into the bloodstream. The job of insulin is to signal muscle and other body cells, including our fat cells, to absorb the glucose to meet your needs. If you eat too many carbs, your pancreas releases loads of insulin, which tells your cells that large amounts of sugars are on the way. The glucose that's not burned will be diverted into storage through glycogenesis reaction. That means muscle and liver glycogen formation. and lipogenesis, that means fat formation in adipose tissue. The glucose that our cells metabolize comes from food and liver production through neoglucogenesis and glycogenolysis reactions. Dietary glucose ensures normal blood sugar for about 5 hours. Beyond that, it is endogenous production, which takes over to keep blood sugar stable for 72 hours. Later again, it is lipolysis. The response to hypoglycemia is automatic and is based on hormonal factors. They are responsible for maintaining normal blood sugar. Insulin is the only hormone that lowers blood sugar by allowing glucose to enter tissues, by inhibiting hepatic glucose production, and by stimulating glycogenesis. Glucagon, through its action on glycogenolysis and neoglucogenesis, as well as catecholamines, which are responsible for the sympathetic manifestations of hypoglycemia, including adrenaline, increase the hepatic production of glucose and limit its use, thus leading to hyperglycemia. The growth hormone secreted by the anterior pituitary gland is also hyperglycemic. Finally, cortisol as well is responsible for increased liver glucose production. The pituitary gland ensures the synthesis of 6 hormones: GH or growth hormone, FSH, LH, TSH, and SHGH hormones, and the storage of 2 hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. Each is controlled by one or more hypothalamic factors. Growth hormone, also called somatotropin, is a polypeptide hormone secreted by somatotropic cells in the interior part of the pituitary gland, which stimulates cell growth and reproduction in humans. The factors that increase the production of growth hormone are as follows: fast, hypoglycemia, protein-rich meal 1 hour before sleep, physical exercise, thyroid hormones, stress, and cortisol. Growth hormone deficiency is manifested in adults often by a tendency to hypoglycemia, poor muscle trophicity, and excess fat. Hopefully, it is infrequent. On the other hand, it is frequent in children and is manifested by stunted growth. I hope that you enjoyed learning in this section as I perfectly did while preparing and presenting it.